I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you here tonight. My name is Mona Steele, and I'm one of 3 co-vice presidents of the League of Women Voters of Central King County. No, we don't have a president. We think 3 vice presidents work really well. The League is partnering tonight with the Naperville Environment and Sustainability Task Force, or NEST, which we're going to pronounce as NEST, the Sierra Club, the Prairie Rivers Network, and the Citizens Utility Board. Tonight begins a very important discussion on a difficult but enormously important topic: the fact that St. Charles, Geneva, and Batavia purchase most of their electricity from Prairie State Energy Campus, a coal-burning power plant in southern Illinois, and how we can help these 3 cities transition from that coal-generated power to renewable and clean energy sources. Many people think the League of Women Voters only as an advocate for voting rights and as a source of reliable information about candidates and the voting process. But the League is also a fierce advocate for positions on public policies. 2 of these positions are embodied in the community meeting tonight. Advocacy for initiatives that promote renewable energy sources, oppose reliance on fossil fuels, and support clean air and water policies, and activism in support of the belief that a democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens, all of you, and requires that governmental bodies protect the citizens' right to know by giving adequate notice of proposed actions, holding open meetings, and making public records accessible. Our first speaker tonight will be Carl Van Drill, co-chair of NEST. Because both Naperville and St. Charles are members of the Illinois Municipal Electric Agency, or IMEA, both communities share similar challenges in the transition to clean energy. Carl will share the vision for Naperville's clean energy future, how Naperville and St. Charles can collaborate to address their shared challenges, and how Naperville and the Tri-Cities can support each other in the efforts to transition to clean energy future. Maureen Stillman, chair of the Energy Committee of NEST, will follow Carl. Maureen will explain the reasons for the challenges triggered by St. Charles membership in IMEA. She will also talk about IMEA's plan to ask St. Charles in early 2024 to renew its energy contract with IMEA 11 years before it has to be renewed. I get to keep talking. Maureen will be followed by Bill Kale and Susan Russo. Bill is a resident of Geneva and will explain how Geneva and Batavia, as members of the Northern Illinois Municipal Power Agency, or NIMPA, are different from St. Charles and IMEA. He will also address specific issues related to Geneva's public electric utility. Susan Russo is a resident of Batavia. She will explain Batavia's particularly unique situation and provide action items that Batavia can and should explore as alternatives to a transition to clean energy. Our keynote speaker is Scott Allen, Renewable Energy Policy Coordinator for the Citizens Utility Board. Through his work for the Citizens Utility Board, Scott has a unique perspective into Illinois' new energy policies adopted and being implemented through the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act of 2021. He also has special knowledge about the benefits and incentives available to Illinois ComEd and Ameren customers and the lack of access to these benefits and incentives for Illinois public utility customers, including all of us here in the Tri-Cities. Finally, I want to welcome Tri-Cities, Illinois House of Representatives who are here tonight. I know that Representative Mara Hirschauer is here and will be speaking in a little bit. Also here tonight, we expected Casey Cuevas. Casey, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Casey. She's the Community Service Director for Senator Karina Villa. Representative Hirschauer has agreed to speak tonight about the importance of public electric utilities and the need to keep their decisions and actions open to the public and representative of democratic principles. I'll now turn the program over to Carl Vandrill.
Hi everyone, my name is Carl Vandrill, and as Lona mentioned, I am a co-chair of a group in Naperville called NEST, Naperville Environment Sustainability Task Force, and she started explaining to you the connection, why Naperville in the Tri-Cities discussion. I'd like to take a moment just to deepen that connection a little bit. We are all here, and this is an issue shared with Naperville, that most of our power, close to 80% for every one of our communities, but maybe even more, comes from coal. That's what brings us here. But the reasons that we are bound together is beyond that. Scott will be talking about the importance of some elements of how we get our power. There's intermediaries that have been referenced, IMEA for St. Charles and Naperville, and NIMBA for Batavia and Geneva. And what binds us together is that there's probably ways that the interactions and how we are represented from those entities could be better. So I tease you with that. Listen to that, because that binds us together as well. And there's actions that are more appropriate for the state that we collectively can support. There's a third item also that I think about that binds us together. But that actually binds everybody together, and that is we all individually can do our part to address climate change, to reduce our carbon footprints, and that might be most appropriate, at least in the short term, maybe for Batavia. I tease you with that, and we'll hear more about that, okay? So that's why I am motivated to be here to work with you, and that's why NEST is motivated to partner and join in what is a growing movement, if you will, of communities to work together so that we can plan for a better future. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about that and kind of how we represent that in Naperville. So first of all, this is our mission statement, okay? We have been in place for about 5 years. We've been at this for 5 years. We have, many people who participate with NEST. Some people are just listening and monitoring, and we have another subset of people, 50 or so, that are active. They're active working with us in various domains, and I'll share those with you in a little bit. But our focus is with working with city government, as you can see, but also with business and with our public as well, just education and advocacy of the importance of what we, environmental sustainability and stewardship. And greenhouse gas reduction is not the only thing we care about, but it's the most important thing we care about. And it's primarily because of the coal situation. The coal situation is what started this 5 years ago. That's what started it. Okay? So what does it look like today? These are our committees. Okay, and to your left, our energy committee. Maureen is going to be speaking after me. Going to be representing, the issues specifically around coal and to kind of educate everybody. And even if you're not from St. Charles, listen, because many of the issues are the same, okay? So listen and participate. We have these other domains that we care about too, transportation, our buildings, the natural environment, and waste. So our group is larger than energy. The importance of this slide, though, is that we've been at it for 5 years, and having community participation is really important. And you'll hear later opportunities for, no matter what community you're a part of, to continue this participation. Being here tonight is a start, but to continue the participation because it's really important. We've been successful in Naperville and also quite frustrated, okay? So, and that's what it takes. Success, and the issues, I think, are raising up and people are noticing. So, but it's really important that, so you don't have to emulate this, but participation is important. You can see on the top, we have at the bottom, those are kind of the disciplines, and at the tops are the engagements. We have people who work with the city, people who work with youth, and the schools. Don't underestimate the youth in the schools. They can be really powerful. Some amazing things have happened. You know, reactions as students or youth have raised things, related to this. So let me continue. What's our vision in Naperville? And this is really important. People are attracted to a positive vision. That's important. They're attracted to a positive vision. And we like to advocate a positive vision. Let's not, we want to move towards clean energy. That paints a positive vision. We want to ensure our future contracts have goals for clean energy, that we improve the governance and transparency of those. And also, there are so many benefits. Moving towards clean energy has economic benefits, and many times it's cheaper. Okay? Take advantage of that. Quality of life, the environment, and even social benefits. So it's a positive vision, and that's something that we rally around with the neighborhood. And the other thing we do is work in a constructive, collaborative style, if you will. Working with our elected leaders, our municipal utilities, business and residents. That we may not agree on everything, but we work in collaboration with them. It's sort of a premise that we follow. Working towards a unified vision, committing to clear goals, public input. You heard it already from the democracy of what we do. We all have municipal power supply, municipally owned power agencies. It should be managed democratically. We're all a part of that. I added the last bullet. I didn't have that in our Naperville meeting, but working together as municipalities to advance clean energy. There was a downstate event similar to this in Muscuda a couple of months ago. We had an event in Naperville in September. 200 people showed up, talking similar to what we are tonight. And now we have 3 more, the Tri-Cities, and joining together as municipalities to me is a really important aspect of this. Okay, I want to leave you with one more slide. You may not think this fits, but there are so many reasons to move towards a clean energy future. This is a page out of a report from Rocky Mountain Institute. They track the space of what's happening here. And where we are, if you look at this, on the left is wind energy, the yellow is the solar energy, red is EV adoption, and the blue is people buying and implementing utility-grade battery. We are on an exponential growth curve right now. That's happening around us. It's just getting started. EVs are a little bit further along. You notice that curve is really spinning up? But the expectation is this is going to continue until we have full adoption, and then of course it flattens out. This is a common trend as people move to new technologies and capabilities, and we're on that curve now. So it's happening, and we don't necessarily have to advocate for that. The industry is going there. We need to work with our local situations so that we can take advantage of what's happening. Okay? So With that, I move to Maureen Stillman. Maureen will be speaking to you about, well, more specifics about the coal situation and what we're advocating in Naperville. She is a founding member of the NEST organization. It's been around for 5+ years doing this. She gets more frustrated than I am because I've only been doing this 2 years. So I hand it over to Maureen to take you into the next topic. Maureen.
Thank you, Carl. Can you hear me?
No.
All right. So, my topic tonight, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the Naperville and St. Charles electric energy sources and our vision for the future. So, both Naperville and St. Charles get the electricity from the IMEA. That stands for the Illinois Municipal Electric Agency. And for both cities, this produces the vast majority of our carbon footprint, this burning of coal to produce our electricity. Naperville constitutes 35% of the IMEA. We are the largest member, and St. Charles is actually second at 14%. And that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight. If we band together, we are a big portion of this. So together we can do a lot. And that's what we're very excited about, to be here. So for the annual cost of electricity in St. Charles, you're spending about $40 million per year. And the city of Naperville averages $105 million per year. So this is a lot of money. And what's happening now is that the IMEA is coming to these cities and asking us to sign a contract extension, which would probably go until either 10 or 15 years into the future. So when you do the math, for St. Charles, this is a $400 to $600 million contract extension. For Naperville, it's even more, between $1 and $1.5 billion. So this is a very big deal. And we are required, through our contracts with the IMEA, to buy all of our electricity from them. So I want to talk about energy mix, because this will help us understand our carbon footprint. The way this is calculated is that you get energy from a variety of sources, our cities do. And then you take the carbon footprint of each of those and add it together. And then that gives you your greenhouse gas impact. So right now, the sources of electricity, you have clean energy, which are the renewables, wind and solar, and they don't emit any carbon at all, so they're zero. And then nuclear, the same, and hydro. So all those are known as clean energy. The fossil fuels, on the other hand, coal and natural gas, are both very high emitters of carbon. And now we can take a look at sources of electricity in the United States. We have, as a whole, we have 18% renewables and 18% nuclear and 22% renewables. So if you add those two together, there's 40% clean energy. And then 20% coal, and the rest is other fossil fuels. So the sum of the carbon footprint is your pollution, in other words. So I went through that so you can see what we have with our IMEA energy source mix. So today it's at 78% coal. That coal is represented, 50% of it is from Prairie State. That's a coal plant down south in Marissa. It's in Illinois. And then 27% comes from a plant in Trimble County, Kentucky. So we get our coal from two states. This is both Naperville and St. Charles, okay, is represented by this graph. Then we have 10% renewable and 1% hydro, so we're at 11% clean energy. And then the rest we get from the short-term market. So what are the issues with burning coal? All coal releases the most carbon when you burn it. And for Prairie State, it's 13 million tons of CO2 per year. So that's what's being emitted in southern Illinois. They're the largest polluter in Illinois, and they're in the top 10 of polluters in the US. Then when you burn coal, you have all these heavy metal byproducts. You have sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, particulates, and mercury. And those all go into the atmosphere that cause heart and lung disease. We also have a byproduct of burning coal, which is called coal ash. It's toxic, it has heavy metals, arsenic, lead, mercury. And then the disposal of that is a big environmental hazard. So Prairie State has a coal ash pond that's over 1 square mile, and it adds 2.3 million cubic yards per year to that pond. And there's a picture of it, and you can see that big rectangle in the back. That's where it is. So I wanted to show you your neighboring cities, some of your neighboring cities here. They are with Commonwealth Edison, and I wanted to compare and contrast the St. Charles and Naperville energy mix with what your neighbors at ComEd have. This is an example of the default supply of a Commonwealth Edison customer. And as you can see, they have 33% nuclear and 7% renewable. This gives them a 40% clean energy footprint, and then 18% coal and the rest natural gas. So if you contrast that with our 78% coal, they have far more clean energy than we have. And we're in the same general area that they are. I found this example of a city in Springfield, Missouri. What they decided to do in 2016 is they wanted to reduce the amount of coal they were burning. Now, they were less than us, right, starting there at 45%. So they came up with a plan in order to make this transition. And they knew that they needed to have a plan that went over time, right? You can't get to clean energy in one step. So the plan was to, instead of having 45% coal, to go to 45% renewables. So in 2018, they started changing their mix, signing new contracts, and changing over from 45% coal to 45% renewable. And then they shrunk the amount of coal they had down to 23%. The most important part of this, though, for their ratepayers, is they left the rates exactly the same, and their reliability did not change. So this is an example of how this could be done, and an example of what the mix looks like before and after. So my point is that transitioning to clean energy is a process. So we know we can't get there overnight. It's going to take time, and just like Springfield, Missouri, it will be incremental. What we need to do is create plans with a timeline to change the mix, to decrease the fossil fuels, and increase the clean energy sources. We must have energy vendors that commit to clean energy goals. And then planning goals and energy source mix must be reported to the public in a timely manner on a regular basis to show that we're making progress and to hold them accountable. I'm going to switch now to the topic of coal carbon capture. The Illinois House and Senate passed a bill called the Illinois Clean Energy Job Act, and it mandates that Prairie State reduce carbon pollution by 45% by the year 2035. So a proposed way of doing this is through a mechanism called carbon capture. This technology, what it does is it extracts the carbon from the coal burning process and stores it underground, as you see in that picture up there. So that it comes out of the coal plant, goes through the system, and then the CO2 goes into the ground, and then the rest goes up into the atmosphere. The problem with this plan to reduce carbon is that it's expensive. The projected cost is $2 billion to build this carbon capture. And then it will cost $174 million a year to operate it. Prairie State has even sent a letter to the Environmental Protection Agency acknowledging that performing 90% capture rate, which is required by the EPA, is unrealistic because this technology is not yet adequately demonstrated, which I'll show in my next slide. There's only one example of coal carbon capture. There's lots of different types of carbon capture, but there's one example in the US called Petronova, which is located in Texas. This has already been built. It cost $1 billion. It began operations in 2017. It was deemed a commercial failure and it closed in 2020. This carbon capture of coal plant was plagued with operational difficulties. It had outages for 367 days over just a 3-year period. We have a quote here from the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. What they said is, Petronova's shutdown highlights deep financial risks facing carbon capture projects in the works, which is what Prairie State is. Our biggest concern is that Prairie State is actually 4 times the size of Petronova, and no one has ever tried to build anything on the scale of Prairie State. We believe that the best way forward is to not do carbon capture, but rather incrementally replace coal with clean energy alternatives. So we believe carbon capture is too risky, too expensive, and should not be the answer to the coal problem. So I attended a webinar from the head of research at Shell Oil, and his observation is that energy has actually shifted from a geological industry to a technology industry. And that the point that I want to make is this is a rapidly changing field now. What we have are ideas out there that people are exploring. For example, in nuclear, there's a technology called small modular reactors, which actually our Naperville City Council is interested in this. We have new utility scale battery storage technologies. The price of this has been dropping for many years. We have innovations in solar and other renewable energy methods. We also have new utility aggregators that can provide us with clean energy solutions. And then finally, our grid operators. For example, they're called independent system operators, like PJM, so they're our operator. They're actually investing in a more flexible grid. And so that is changing as well. I want to now make some final statements about the contract extension. So IMEA is proposing to extend the contract for both Naperville and St. Charles. They're proposing to put that in front of us in 2024, which is why we're here now. So it's coming up. And we would like to ask the city councils and ask the citizens here to ask the city council to not sign the extension. We believe it is premature to sign that now. And rather, what we should do is spend time investigating these emerging technologies, looking at alternate energy sources, looking at new battery storage technologies. We should hold public hearings to gather requirements and priorities. And again, as others have mentioned, require open and transparent process for all of this. So I want to emphasize amount of these two contracts. For Naperville, the contract extension exceeds $1 billion. For St. Charles, it exceeds $400 million. So it's 2023, and the contract does not end until 2035 at the soonest. We have plenty of time to gather the stakeholders and come together with our city and city council, with our city workers, to construct our vision, set our goals, and determine the future of our electric utility for us and for generations to come. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? This sounds like it's working. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming out here. You have no idea how happy I am to see this happening. This is an awesome and an enormous thing to be going on around us. Thank you, Maureen and Carl and Mona, for the excellent introduction we have going there. My name is Bill Kale. I'm from Geneva, Illinois, and like Geneva and Batavia residents, we are not part of IMEA, so we're not really concerned with the contract so much. But we'll get into that in just a moment. I'll show you the brief things, how they're different. But because we have such a close geography and cultural heritage here together, I think we are really related as three cities in many ways, and certainly the ownership of Prairie State is a strong one. So I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. This is what democracy in action looks like. This is it. You're doing it. It's something that's becoming under fire lately, and it's difficult to do. So it's great to be able to stand up and take an action to do something. I also want to thank the City Council of Geneva. I don't recognize anybody here. I looked around earlier. There's one. Okay, we've got them going. So I want to thank them for signing the Greenness Region Compact. I don't know if everybody out here should know that. I should have brought something printed out for you and give you some homework to go study the Greenness Region Compact. It's an excellent design thing that shows how communities can study all the different areas of sustainability and have a little checklist and a report card to see how you're doing and moving on that. And Geneva, St. Charles, and Batavia have all signed on to the Greenness Region Compact, so this is not something new for them. Geneva has also been very aggressive about adopting supportive solar panel policies and EV policies to encourage people to use more electricity. And for the work on the Geneva 2025 Sustainability Plan, it helps move even more of this together in unison. And although he's not here tonight, I also want to call out Mayor Burns for being a champion for the stretch code at the state and national level. I won't get into the detail, but that's something that would encourage states to be able to allow people to have a code that was much more energy efficient. This way, when you buy a new building, you would already have built in decades, if not a century, of energy savings, instead of having the short upfront savings of a few dollars. So this way it's coordinated and understood and easy, and it's been a lot of resistance to get this done by builders and real estate folks who aren't interested in seeing energy efficiency happen, because it doesn't happen at the moment of the sale. But for folks who are going to live there for the next century or so, it's a big part of your life. So it's one thing to be paying attention to, and Mayor Burns has been a strong advocate for that, and we will be hearing more about stretch energy codes in the next year or two. It'll be a big thing coming up. So what I want to do, now I've got everybody here together. This is really a touch microphone. All right, well, I've got everybody here. We have to, for once, call this out and call it out loud. What is happening here? Why is there so much urgency? Certainly we're coming here for Naperville and for St. Charles, because we've got the contract coming up, an early renewal, and we're concerned about the coal, but that's nothing really new. What has not been happening, what has been happening for so long now, is the climate emergency. There's a title for an IPCC report from the fall of 2021 called Climate Change is Widespread, Rapid, and Intensifying. And that is, the situation's not just getting worse gradually, the rate of change is actually increasing. I Googled that because I wrote it down once and I thought I was exaggerating and making it up. So I just Googled the sentence, and then sure enough, it's the title of a report from a couple of years ago. So I did not invent that. Last November, in advance of COP27, the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, said, We are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator. So he was not mentioning words. The situation is getting real, and it's getting really serious. The climate news this week is the release of 3 major reports in advance of the upcoming COP28. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the World Economic Forum's State of the Climate Action, the 5th National Climate Assessment from the United States government. A summary of these documents insists that we still need to do more, and we need to do more faster. So our concern is that national and international climate concerns are often focused on extreme weather events and the disruption they can cause. COVID revealed problems disruptions can cause. I don't think any of the climate action plans include concerns for shortages of baby formula. But you never know what's going to happen when you mess with the distribution channels. So I'm going to reference that GRC, Greenest Region Compact document I mentioned earlier. It lists 10 consensus goals. The very first goal is climate change. It has 4 bullet points below it. And the first 3 are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, maintain clean air, and the third one is prepare for climate change impacts. I suspect it implies weather-related events, and while well-meaning, major media exposure to recurring weather disasters that are not happening here sometimes increase the feeling that it's all happening far away and that we should feel safe. While the very real weather disasters are not our greatest threat, it will be legal and market concerns of coal losing its social license to operate without cost. I would bet not too many people here had ever heard that before. I don't know if I heard that before I wrote it down this afternoon. So I'm going to repeat that line. This is really what we were facing here as communities. When you don't go outside to see the trees and the birds, you go, the climate's not changing so much around here. I think we're going to survive this. But the rest of the world does see it, and they are acting on it. So I'm going to repeat that line. The real concern will be legal and marketing concerns of coal losing its social license to operate without a cost. A climate tax was in the recent IRA legislation for almost 2 full days. I don't know if you remember all of the chaos and crazy that was going on right before they passed the IRA. It went on very intensively for a long time. They argued extensively about what would and would not be in there. And in the middle of it, they suddenly popped in some legislation from a group called the Citizens Climate Lobby that they've been working for over a decade. This is a very well thought out, extensive bill on how to do climate tax. And there it was for 2 days. They just said, let's do that too. It didn't last. So, but what they did was take that out and realize we're not taxing nobody more than we have to, so that's always been the resistance with that. But there's a version in there. There's a key provision called a border adjustment tax. It looks like it's going to be way easier to tax somebody else for the excess carbon than it is to tax ourselves. The European Union is instituting a trial phase of what they call CBAM, a carbon border adjustment mechanism. And the Republicans in Congress have introduced a similar measure just a few weeks ago. In viewing the changing situation, the world is changing laws and business practices. Staying in a coal business may become a risky business. So I've mentioned a little bit here, the differences between Batavia, Geneva, and St. Charles is the fact they have different kind of contracts. The IMA contract is a 100% purchase contract. All the energy they buy in Naperville, they buy from IMEA. That's going to be an important point because I'm going to advocate for us using way more electricity. You wouldn't be expecting that. However, in the Geneva-Batavia areas, they have NIPA contracts which are solely to buy their ownership share of the Prairie State output. Batavia bought a huge share and it covers their needs almost completely. So both St. Charles and Batavia get all of their power from one place. St. Charles gets it from IMEA, and Batavia gets it from Prairie State. But Geneva has a smaller share. They just bought a little bit. They get 67% of their coal, their electrical power from Prairie State, and the rest of it they purchase from other places. If they were to expand their use of electricity above and beyond that, they'd be completely free right now to choose who they want to have for an electrical supplier. That's not something Batavia or St. Charles can do yet, but Geneva could. I'd like to reference the Environmental Stewardship chapter in the Geneva 2025 plan. There's a special note on page 13. The objective number 4 is for Geneva residents to actively contribute to preserving the city's natural environment. The second action item is launch public awareness campaigns that encourage residents to make sustainable choices and engage in environmentally friendly behaviors. And they give us a couple of examples. Skip the straw and carry a cup. Those are certainly laudable goals. I suggest we can do much more than that. We can actively promote something I call becoming an electric city. We are not a home rule city, and we're limited as to what we can do with our ordinances, but we can promote the increased use of transitioning from gas and oil to electricity. Even when we get 100% of our renewable power, we'll still have to change the fuel we use for buildings and transportation. Even if we can't pass a law banning new gas hookups, we can advocate for preferred use of electric appliances. All of this will take decades. We need to begin now. We are already late. The city can help by finding a way to include this on our websites and newsletters and letterheads, including this in regular, frequent items on the agenda with announcements and public invitations. This should not be kept practically secret. Yes, there is a note at the bottom of our newsletter, and it is available on our website if you work hard for it, but that is not the same thing at all. Not what we need to do. We need to get the community together to pay attention to what we can do to transition and make sure that our city council hears that we are in fact concerned so that they can put it on the agenda and move it along. Otherwise, frankly, they're just too busy to deal with this. It's too complicated an issue. As you've seen already, we've had 2 speakers, we have more speakers. There's a lot of things to know about what's happening here. So finally, I'll wrap here. So I'd like to go back once again to that GRC document that I mentioned on our website. It includes a 4th item under climate actions: engage the community in climate change, mitigation, and adaptation. That's it in a nutshell. We've already agreed it's time to engage the community. Now it's time for the community to engage the city council. This should be a collaborative effort. It'll be too much work for the councils to do alone. They need our support. This is why I'm so glad you came out here tonight. I believe our community can become a leader, not just in the Fox Valley, but in the whole state, and show people how to do this. It's time to bring democracy to our power supply, and we can show the way.
We got out of order here.
Okay, all right. Good evening. Once again, thank you for all being here tonight. My name is Susan Russo, and during the past 38 years, I have been an attorney and resident of Batavia. Since my retirement in 2022, I have worked as a clean energy advocate with the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, Sierra Club, Prairie Rivers Network, and the League of Women Voters, Central Kane County. I first began working with our keynote speaker, Scott Allen, when I volunteered to spread the word to the people of Illinois about the good things that CEJA, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, does for our state. All of that has led me here tonight. I will share with you the particularly difficult situation that Batavia is in with regard to its source of electricity, but more importantly, what we can do to improve that situation in Batavia. Unlike St. Charles and Geneva, Batavia does not purchase any electricity that is produced by natural gas, methane gas, nuclear reactors, hydro dams, wind farms, or solar fields. As this shows, we purchase all of our electricity from the Prairie State Energy Campus through a contract with NIMPA that expires in 2056 unless Prairie State is retired earlier than that date. So potentially, for the next 34 years, Batavia will be delivering to all of us, residents, businesses, factories, churches, governmental and nonprofit entities, electricity that is generated by the burning of coal. As if this fact alone is not enough, Batavia buys more coal-generated electricity than we use. Batavia is contractually required to purchase 55 megawatts each year. Batavia says that it used a monthly average of 48 megawatts last year and is on track to use about the same amount this year. The unused electricity is sold back on the market, often at a loss. All Batavians pay for this loss in their monthly electric bills. Take a look at your last electric bill to find the line PPAF 0.01825 and see how much you paid that month for the unused electricity. This slide shows what my household paid in June of this year. Batavia City Council is technically the decision maker on all issues related to the electric utility that the city owns. However, there are 3 facts that hinder City Council from being the open and transparent decision maker expected of public utilities. First, City Council has delegated that job to its representative on the NIMPA board. While the City Council is kept well informed about local electric issues like the repair and upgrade of electric infrastructure, electric costs, setting of electric rates, etc., City Council is often not informed about what is happening at the NIMPA or Prairie State level. For example, City Council had been advised that it was possible that carbon capture could be installed on Prairie State someday. But City Council was never informed until about 6 months after the fact that Prairie State had moved forward with a solicitation of interest to potential developers and contractors to own, build, and operate a carbon capture system at Prairie State. Second, City Council members, the mayor, and city staff have all signed confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements. These agreements ostensibly allow them to gain access to NIMPA and Prairie State information, but these agreements also prevent them from sharing anything they know or learn with their constituents and Batavia ratepayers. And third, NIMPA and Prairie State regularly use the Open Meetings Act, closed meeting provisions, Freedom of Information Act exemptions, and confidentiality clauses in the multitude of contracts that make up the Batavia-NIMPA-Prairie State relationship to hide information from both City Council members and Batavia residents, businesses, and ratepayers. All of this information is mind-numbing. It seems like there is absolutely nothing we can do in Batavia except bite our nails and wait. But I am here tonight to tell you that there are things we can do. We have a coal problem, but there are things we can do about it. 5 actions we can take now. So first, we can support our City Council in its efforts to implement the Greenest Region Compact's climate initiatives that were incorporated into the city's strategic plan. These efforts will raise awareness and concern throughout Batavia about fossil fuels and the need to reduce the production of greenhouse gases by making our buildings more energy efficient and eventually ending the burning of fossil fuels like gasoline and natural gas. Second, we can join our neighbors in Geneva and both become electric cities. How do we do this? By educating and informing Batavians about the need to replace their gas-powered vehicles with electric vehicles. By replacing broken and outdated gas appliances, stoves, water heaters, dryers, with electric appliances. And by replacing air conditioners with heat pumps and installing heat pumps instead of traditional furnaces and air conditioners. These efforts can be supported by City Council by providing education programs, incentives, rebates, awards, and contests that encourage and enable Batavians to make these changes. We can also do this by encouraging City Council to adopt a new stretch code when it becomes available in July next year, so that all new construction within the city complies with these electric city goals. Third, we can ask City Council to say no to risky carbon capture technology at Prairie State Energy Campus. The Council has informally taken this step, but it must formally confirm that position. There is a fourth action we can take. Since we will be asking Batavians to use more electricity, wouldn't it be good to know that Batavia's electric grid can handle this increased usage, or how much it might cost to improve or upgrade that system? Batavia says it uses 48 megawatts of the 55 megawatts it purchases each year. Wouldn't it be good to know at what point Batavia can purchase additional electricity from renewable sources instead of turning again to Prairie State for more coal-generated electricity? Since Batavia's construction bonds used to build Prairie State won't be paid off until 2042, 19 years from now, shouldn't we explore opportunities for early payoff or forgiveness of those bonds? And because Batavia technically owns a part of Prairie State, shouldn't there be a plan in place for how we are going to manage and pay for the eventual closure and cleanup of Prairie State? So the fourth action is to urge City Council to hire an independent consultant to develop a long-range energy plan to answer these questions and a multitude of other questions. And fifth and finally, we can encourage our state representatives, Senators Villa and Holmes, and Representatives Hirschauer, Hansen, and Hernandez, to support legislation next spring that will limit the use of Open Meetings Act closed meetings and Freedom of Information Act exemptions by NIMBA and IMEA and Prairie State to ensure greater transparency. Tri-Cities council members, residents, and ratepayers need access to information to make energy planning more open, democratic, and accessible. Climate change threatens the future of the Tri-Cities and their residents. We here in the Tri-Cities must face that future with the hope of intelligent planning and determined resolution. Please support this effort by joining Tri-Cities Clean Energy at an upcoming meeting at the St. Charles Public Library at 7 p.m. on Monday, November 27th. Together, we can begin to solve our coal problem. Thank you.
Just to make sure that everybody gets there who wants to, I want to pass around this. If you're interested in any more information, I know a lot of you, what's going on with this microphone, a lot of you registered for this event this evening. Just in case you didn't, if you want to volunteer, get more involved. I gotta leave my hands free, so I'll make a lot of motions. My name is Scott Allen. I am Renewable Energy Policy Coordinator for the Citizens Utility Board. For anybody not familiar, CUB is a utility watchdog and consumer advocate. We were started in 1983 by the Citizens Utility Board Act, and I know that it's hard to see that up there, but I'll read the quote from the act. CUB was charged with promoting the health, welfare, and prosperity of all citizens of the state by ensuring effective and democratic representation of utility consumers. So I learned years ago the hard way that when I speak in front of crowds of public utility owners, that I have to give a little disclaimer and remind people that the CUB Act doesn't say that our advocacy stops at the doors of the Illinois Commerce Commission. We advocate and educate all citizens of the state. So I want to talk about the conditions that have led to these conversations this evening. And I want to give you some background too on why utility regulation changes for some people, but not for others. And I want to stress the importance of what it means to be a publicly owned utility, or a public utility owner. And that's important, as is transparency and good governance. So for decades, CUB stayed out of this arena. But after the Future Energy Jobs Act passed in 2016, the number of calls that we got at CUB started to increase, the number of complaints from municipal and co-op utility owners and members started to increase. And so we couldn't ignore the problem any longer. Especially for me, I work in downstate, and that's where most of our publicly owned utilities are. So shortly after FEJA passed, it became clear that the state was preparing to deal with its most pressing issue. And that's cleaning up our electricity generation sector. So Illinois was a particularly dirty state, especially in terms of coal generation. After all, we have one of the deadliest coal plants in the nation down in Marissa, Illinois, and that's Prairie State. Well, by 2018, the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, of which CUB is a member, started traveling the state and holding listening sessions, asking people what their communities needed in an energy transition. And we avoided places like Batavia and Geneva and St. Charles and Naperville because these laws don't impact you. So the people who were calling CUB and asking about all of these things that were happening and saying, why doesn't that work for me? I don't want to take credit for all of this, but I asked them to start joining weekly meetings and let's talk with each other. And let's figure out how to get fair and equal access to the protections and benefits of clean air and clean energy, and how they can exercise their rights as utility owners. But before we could do that, we had to understand all of the barriers that were blocking access to the municipal utility ratepayers and owners. So the rest of what I'm going to share with you this evening is the result of our group of volunteers, of people just like you, who have been meeting and talking and thinking and coming to an understanding of these barriers for the last 5 years or so. So when people raise concerns about equal access to solar, or about vague billing, or about who's lobbying on their behalf, or how they transition their coal plants, here's we found these to be the main factors in those concerns. First, we have a two-tiered system that is built into our laws in this state. Publicly owned utilities are not required to adapt or follow any best practices or planning for procurement of electricity. Transparency. There's no objective body who decides what information about a utility can or cannot be shared with the owners of the utility, people like you. City councils can choose what they make themselves aware of, but you can't share what you don't know. Planning. The most critical tool that utilities have is their ability to understand trends in markets and forecasts through regular, comprehensive, and transparent planning. But when the planners, in this case IMEA and NIMPA, are not obligated to conduct transparent planning, we don't know whose interests they're serving. Oversight rests almost entirely with the city council or the co-op board, and there's no third-party audit of what's going on. There's no obligation to consider things that might benefit people who are served by the utility. And power supply. Who has control over it and how they make decisions, we believe is the single most important factor determining whether or not a utility is capable of adapting. If you haven't already, you probably will soon hear from people who argue that the things that we're asserting are incorrect or misguided or dangerous, as if what we're saying isn't in accordance with the principles of democracy, of public bodies. But the fact is that municipal utilities are operated with public money. It's not ratepayer money, it's not investor capital, it's public money. And the public ought to be able to account for the expenditure of every last cent, especially before major decisions are made. You all should be in the room when these decisions are being made about your power supply. But that's not the way that it works under our law. And whether that's good, bad, fair, or unfair, well, I'm not here to judge that, but I will say that, over the last several years, we have seen some people in this state reap more benefits than others. And that's all across the state. A little bit of background. I said we have a two-tiered system, so I want to share some information to highlight the differences between investor-owned utilities and municipal utilities. Investor-owned utilities like ComEd are owned by shareholders who are guaranteed profits and rates of return. They're regulated by the Illinois Commerce Commission. The Commerce Commission has rate-making authority over investor-owned utilities, meaning that investor-owned utilities can't charge their customers anything until it's approved by the Commerce Commission. Laws passed in the state that are administered by the Commerce Commission, most of CEJA and FEJA, for example, these utilities are forced to abide by those laws. And our laws tell us what information is available to the public, who is allowed to intervene in any of these cases with planning and rate making. The laws tell those utilities that they have to reduce the amount of electricity that they deliver to their customers. So we tell them that you have to take a loss on the amount of electricity you sell to your customers. And again, we tell these utilities that you have to let the public intervene in these processes. When you come to the Commerce Commission to ask for money, the public gets a chance to stand up and say no. So every year these utilities go before the Commission to ensure that they're hitting energy efficiency targets, that they're working to reduce the demand for electricity. They're compelled to work year-round with community-based organizations to ensure that the needs of communities and people in those communities are met. Finally, the biggest distinction between investor-owned utilities and publicly owned utilities is that the investor-owned utilities are not allowed to own generation resources. So ComEd and Ameren, or what would become Ameren, they had to sell off their generation assets back in 1997. The reason for that is that you run into a kind of a dangerous game when you own both the means of production and the means of delivery. You can force people to pay uneconomic electricity prices. So we'll take a look now at the oversight for municipally owned utilities. And I apologize if this is too rudimentary for some people, but I think it's important. Municipal and co-op utilities are owned by the people they serve. They're not regulated by the state, and they're only very lightly regulated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Rate-making authority for a publicly owned utility belongs with the city council or the co-op board of directors. Publicly owned utilities are not required to do grid planning, make grid investments. They don't have to reduce the demand on the grid. They don't have to offer energy efficiency programs. They don't have to offer shut-off protections or payment arrangements or detailed billing or disclose how they set their rates. So the theory behind this model, this publicly owned utility model, is that since these utilities don't make a profit, they're owned by the people. And since local politicians, at the local level, are free from undue influence or corruption, they can respond directly to the people they govern, and they can work together to figure out how to make their utility run best to meet their local needs. And one of those local needs, is in the theme tonight, is power supply. Nope, wrong, not yet. So at one time, we knew power supply to work one way. We have large centralized plants, coal, gas, nuclear, and they make as much power as we'll ever need. We believe that there was an infinite supply of coal, and that coal is the most efficient way to generate electricity, and on top of that, it's clean. So nothing's ever going to change about that. So why not make long-term contracts to make sure that we're getting the best price over the course of decades? Well, the problem is that the world changed. And it changed quite a long time ago, too. And a few years from now, all of the electricity in the state, or the vast majority of electricity in this state, will be generated from variable output clean energy. So making long-term contracts for these big centralized, what they call baseload generators, those days are over, except when it comes to public power. So most long-term fossil fuel contracts are held by, not just in this state, but across the country, are held by publicly owned utilities. So this is a problem that has existed for a long time all across the country. So let's contrast that with the way that the Illinois Power Agency procures power for Ameren and ComEd customers. So I said that Ameren and ComEd are not allowed to own power generation, so how do people get electricity? Well, they have the option to choose who their supplier is. But if they don't want to go out and find somebody to supply electricity for them, the Illinois Power Agency will go do that. What the Power Agency doesn't do is make long-term contracts for fossil fuels. They use careful planning and they use legislation to influence power markets so that they're able to procure cheaper, cleaner electricity for most of the people in the state. And so when we lock ourselves into these contracts and we have no way of exiting them and we just keep getting deeper and deeper in, we preclude any option to find something more rational in the future. And keep in mind too that unlike ComEd or Ameren, as we all know, municipal and co-op utilities are allowed to own generation. That's how all of you came to own power. But most utilities, municipal and co-op utilities, it's really hard and expensive to own a power plant, right? An individual power plant in each city. So they all got together and said, let's pool our resources and find some third party to take care of finding power for us. And this is where we get IMEA and NEMPA. These are legal entities which, quote, jointly plan, finance, own, and operate facilities for the generation and transmission of electrical power and energy. So what's the problem, right? Well, first, they don't treat the public as equal partners in planning, and they don't allow you to access information such as financial documents related to the assets that you jointly own. For example, if Prairie State were to begin operating at a loss, you'd never be aware of it except you might see your bills start to increase. You most definitely would start to see your bills increase. But you wouldn't have any insight onto why that was happening, and you wouldn't have any insight or input on, are there better options out there? It doesn't matter, right? You're locked into these contracts until 2056 in some cases. And so this sort of intransparency has never been good in the democratic process. But it was fine for a while because there was only one way we were ever going to make electricity, right? It was with coal or gas. So what did it matter anyway? What were you going to do? Where were you going to go? Well, it's particularly problematic now because of things like the Inflation Reduction Act. That provides tens of billions of dollars to municipal utilities in Illinois and elsewhere that allows them to own their own generation. And I don't mean jointly own and have it located, 250 miles from here. I mean within your city limits. You can own this now. It was too expensive before for the city of Batavia or St. Charles to spend $100 million to build solar. But with the Inflation Reduction Act, now the federal government could cover 30 all the way up to 70% projects. But unless you're aware of these things and you make changes to your procurement practices, none of this matters. And IMEA members are not currently allowed to get their power anywhere but IMEA. And that's insane, given the opportunities that are coming from the state and the federal government to say that, no, you signed this contract and there's nothing that we can do to let you out of that. We're not even going to try. We're not even going to say that there could be something better. So we need these joint action agencies to commit to publicly informed planning on a regular basis, and we need to be able to open up those plans for objective oversight. No decisions about your power supply should be made without your input and your consent. But we're not here tonight to advocate that these joint action agencies or municipal utilities be brought under the jurisdiction of the Commerce Commission or the Illinois Power Agency. But we're asking residents to be granted access to the decision-making process. We're asking that they be given disclosures of the financial performance of the assets that they own. These agencies are public bodies, and they make decisions that determine your power supply decades into the future. The least they can do is commit to comprehensive resource planning with input from the people they serve. But it's not all about power supply. It's also about equal access to programs that help people, the solar subscription programs that we have in the state. It's about ensuring that people don't get left behind as the function of a utility continues to change. Now, how do we get these types of programs and we get this innovation? We plan, and we change our laws every few years to compel utilities to deliver electricity in a way that meets our changing needs. So I just want to go through a few of the laws, the critical laws that Illinois has passed. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I think it's important to highlight these. In '97, we got the Rate Relief Act, and that was a response to spiraling higher electricity prices from ComEd and Ameren. So we passed this act and we froze rates for 10 years. That's when we broke apart the investor-owned utilities. They had to sell off their generating assets, and we gave people the option to find another supplier. 2007 was the Illinois Power Agency Act. And it created the Illinois Power Agency. It did a couple of other things too, but the Illinois Power Agency has become one of the most important agencies in the state when it comes to climate, energy, and consumer protections. They were put in charge of procuring electricity for Ameren and ComEd customers, and in that case, they're looking for the cheapest price, and nobody except the supplier is making a profit off of it. ComEd's not making a profit. Obviously, the state of Illinois is not making a profit off of it. But they were also put in charge of coming up with energy efficiency and renewable energy portfolios. And so what that means is that the Illinois Power Agency was told, you have to find a way for the people of Illinois to reduce the amount of electricity they need. And you have to find a way to incentivize the building of massive amounts of renewable energy. One of these days, we'll come back to those plans and we'll put them into action. So in 2011, before we can do that though, we have to have a grid that can manage that kind of flow, right? So in 2011, we passed the Grid Modernization Act, the Energy Infrastructure Modernization Act. It required the investor-owned utilities to do that, to plan your grids. This is where we get smart meters. This is where we get programs like ComEd's hourly pricing, where ComEd customers have the opportunity to pay the real-time price of electricity, which is often much, much cheaper than the fixed cost of electricity. So the General Assembly foresaw the decentralization of electricity generation, and they saw the importance of the smart grid. So gone were the days of building coal plants, and believe it or not, nobody was crazy enough to build a coal plant in 2008, except the city of Springfield and Peabody Coal. But the General Assembly saw this coming, and they knew that we were going to have distributed generation. Like we were at hundreds of thousands of solar panels on people's roofs and in fields all over the state, and that we needed this grid, this smart grid, this infrastructure to match that. And we get, something as simple as smart meters, which allow us to have these solar subscription programs that I mentioned, but also it gives us insight, it gives your city. If the city of Geneva or St. Charles, for example, were to install these smart meters, it would allow them and their customers and you all to see who, what, and when and where are people using electricity, and what does that mean for our grid. And you take that information and you plan a grid to meet people's needs. And then, of course, in 2016, though, we get the Future Energy Jobs Act, and that is when we start putting this stuff into action. So that Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard, CEJA found ways for the state to incentivize people to build renewable energy. It created the Renewable Energy Credits, or REC system. So that's how the state is able to take somebody, put solar on your roof, the state sends you a check. And it's important to say here too, that FEJA brought also a welcome subsidy to all of you, muni co-op ratepayers. You're allowed to get checks from the state for your solar, right? But it's ComEd and Ameren customers who fund that. And it's fine, it's great. I'm glad that we're subsidizing our publicly owned utilities. And we don't ask much in return from the rest of us. And then in 2021, of course, we get CEJA, the Climate Equitable Jobs Act, which built on FEJA, but it also took on a few new priorities. Racial equity, economic and environmental justice, utility transparency, utility reform, and it put a deadline on pollution from power generation in the state. I know this is hard to see, but what CEJA meant to do was match the recommendations from the global scientific community. The global scientific consensus has been for a while that no coal after 2030. Even 2030 is pushing it, but no coal after 2030. And so that's what the state set out to do. And then we start bringing gas offline. We start in the environmental justice communities, close gas plants there. And then we go to the rest of the state. And by 2040, we bring all gas offline. And now we're working with nuclear and a massive amount of renewable energy and storage. Is this possible? I think absolutely it's possible, but only if we plan and actually start doing it. So let's address the glaring exception that we've all been talking about, the Prairie State Coal Plant and Springfield's coal plant as well, but we'll deal with them at a later time. Why is it that those plants are allowed to operate until 2045? Well, despite what you might hear from people, it's not because they're the cleanest coal plants in the state. I have actually heard that many, many times. Prairie State is the largest single source of pollution that we have in this state, and it was exempted for political reasons. We couldn't gather the political will to close that plant in 2030. The fossil fuel lobby threatened to kill the entire bill if there wasn't an exception made for Prairie State. The other coal owners in the state, though, Vistra Energy, for example, that owns a gigantic coal fleet down in Ameren territory, they announced in 2019 that they were getting out of the coal business well before 2030. And not because they are suddenly, they woke up and said, you know, we've gotten a sense of ethics now and morality, so we're going to close the coal plants. They weren't making money off of it. Coal has been for a long time uneconomical and really expensive to run. So I didn't go through this entire list to say that these are the laws that all of your cities should follow. Though I do think that our pollution standards should apply across the board to any polluter in the state. I wanted to show you that it is possible to plan a transition and that these are just policy choices that we make. Every 2 years, the Illinois Power Agency conducts long-term planning. They welcome the public into that process. It goes through several rounds. It goes to the Commerce Commission for approval, and then they post it on their website for anybody in the state to go and examine. I think that you all should have the same access to your procurers of energy. So what's stopping you from doing that? Well, the people who work within those joint action agencies, IMEA and NIPA, they say that they'll tell you, they have said many times, that they'll tell you or your city council members anything they want to know. But we know that that's not true. They get to decide what information is made public and what's not. But there's something that you, as stakeholders and as owners, have to demand, because bad decisions about your power supply hold you back from all of those other things that I talked about. All of those programs, you spend so much money and you have kind of, I don't mean this to sound like derogatory, but you've given away half of the function of your utility to these agencies that are not accountable to you and you don't elect them. So what can you do about this? Well, we mentioned that there are, Susan mentioned, and I think Carl mentioned too, all of the things that are kind of in front of you right now with carbon capture especially. That is a technology that has, as Maureen showed, has consistently underperformed and failed. We wouldn't even be talking about carbon capture if it weren't for the massive amount of federal money that was going to subsidize this technology. 2 years ago, nobody would have even thought that they would build, seriously thought. I mean, people talked about it, but they wouldn't have gone through with building carbon capture on Prairie State because it was such a massive loser. But now, even if you capture a minor amount of that carbon, you're going to make a ton of money in the form of federal tax credits. But at a meeting similar to this one, Carl mentioned in Naperville a couple of months ago, two champions of climate and energy, Senator Laura Ellman and Representative Janet Yang spoke about the need to pass legislation requiring public power entities to be more transparent. I'm glad that we have Representative Hirschauer here, she's going to talk in just a minute, and Representative Matt Hansen as well. We need to require municipal utilities. Again, I know this is hard to see, but we need to require our municipal utilities, our joint action agencies, to maintain and make public records pertaining to the economic value of generation assets. We need full disclosure of public funds used for lobbying by the municipal utility trade associations. We need to limit the exception to the Illinois Open Meetings Act that joint action agencies use to discuss contracts and power plants. This exception has been applied arbitrarily and been abused so that matters of importance are discussed outside of your earshot. We need municipal utilities to draft and pass ethics requirements for their employees to avoid any conflicts of interest. And we need to require regular and comprehensive resource planning by any entity that delivers and supplies electricity to people. So I urge you all to take a look at and read the fact sheets that were here tonight. There is a good explainer written by the Prairie Rivers Network on kind of a top-level look at our transparency issues, especially for IMEA. But if anybody's interested in kind of digging in a little bit more, there's a link on that website, but the Clean Energy Alliance of Naperville, they take this information that IME does make public, and they also have a very detailed, you have to kind of follow the links that you probably can't see, but there's a really detailed report on their website of the things that you can't know as IMEA members. And also get involved with us. We welcome everybody to this, and I work for CUB, but I take orders from the volunteer consumers, and come be my boss too. Come join us. You're all welcome. Thank you again for coming out this evening. We really appreciate seeing these people, see people like you come out and talk about your utilities. And I'm going to hand it over now to another one of our representative, our champions, one of our heroes in the General Assembly, Representative Herschel.
So I really want to commend you all on your listening skills. You've done a wonderful job tonight with a lot of really heavy information. And I recognize a lot of faces because you've been in this fight for a long time. This is probably not, for many of you, the first time you've heard about this issue, and it won't be the last. So thank you for being here, for listening. And I want to thank Bill and Susan and Lona and the League of Women Voters and Scott from CUB for being here and putting this on tonight because it's so very important. My name is Maura Hirschauer. I'm the state representative of the 49th District. That includes the communities of Batavia, a little bit of Geneva, and Naperville. I also represent West Chicago, Bartlett, Warrenville, South Elgin. It's a little jigsaw puzzle of a district, but it's really wonderful. I live in Batavia with my husband and my 3 kids. So this is a personal issue for me. I'm here tonight because I live in a community that has a coal problem, and I represent communities that have coal problems. We own a coal plant. That's bleak. I never woke up and wanted to, turn on my lights and contribute to a coal ash pond in someone else's backyard. That's not what Batavians stand for. It's not what folks in Naperville, Geneva, and St. Charles stand for. And I think it's time that we start educating folks in our communities so that we can make a real change. The facts about fossil fuel and climate change are indisputable. You've all heard how much of our power comes from coal. I don't want to reiterate that. When we entered into these contracts 15 years ago, we knew about fossil fuels. We knew about it then. We know better now, and now we have an opportunity to really court, a path of change. The fact that we are all here tonight, that's not bleak. Owning a coal plant is bleak. But seeing folks like you take time out of your night, I'm usually in bed in a little bit, and maybe some of you are too, but you stuck it out and you're listening and you're taking action, that gives me hope. And we are all here tonight to talk about a shift to renewable energy solutions, to engage the really wonderful people who are working in our municipal government, who are serving on our city councils, who also want to make this change. We just need to have more open dialogue about it. In 2021 in Springfield, we've talked about CEJA, but that's one of the most proudest moments I had was, I was elected in 2020, took office in 2021, and I pressed my yes button for CEJA. I knew that meant closing the coal plant where I get 100% of my energy. I knew that meant a change for Batavians, Genevans, St. Charlesians, Napervillians, but I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think that we can be responsible to our ratepayers. We can chart a course for clean new energy, and we can create some really good clean energy jobs in new technology that will last a long time. I am proud of that vote because closing Prairie State is the right thing to do. Reaching zero emissions by 2045 does not mean carbon capture in my book. I will be in Springfield making sure as much as I can, and I have a whole crew of Green Caucus members behind me that also do not buy the rhetoric of carbon capture. We will be working really hard with our allies in Springfield to make sure that Prairie State reaches zero emissions through clean energy sources, not carbon capture. We voted to close Prairie State. It was the right thing to do. And one thing I want to talk about, as we are wrestling with these changes, as we are wrestling with the decisions that our local governments are going to deal with, we just need to be open. We need to have more conversations like this. The transparency legislation that Senator Edelman and Representative Yang-Nor have already filed, I have already signed on to. We're going to make that legislation better. Rep. Yang-Nor is my carpool buddy down to Springfield. We talk about this issue for 3 hours at a time on that trip down. We're working really hard to make sure that our city councils, I see Jen from Batavia over there, to make sure that they have the tools and the information they need to make good decisions, because we are all in this together. In 2020, the reason why I ran for office really was because of my kids. I have 3 kids. It's because of my kids. It's because of your kids and your grandkids. We watched kids rise up in 2018, whether it be for safety in their schools, for safety from gun violence, whether it be for the future of this planet. Children are standing up and they're asking all of the adults in the room to listen. That's why I ran for office, so I could be one of those adults in the room. We are all in this room to hold space for those kids, to make sure that our planet is habitable for them and my grandkids and your grandkids and great-grandkids. So we're in this together. I feel very positive about the fact that I own a coal plant that will close down in 2045, and I will help move us forward in Batavia and the Tri-Cities to a clean future. And I'll leave you with that. I'm not sure who's next, but here comes Lana. But thank you all for being here tonight.
You're going to keep doing that because we want to thank all of the speakers tonight. So if you give everybody another really big round of applause. Everyone so very much for attending this community meeting tonight. Again, we want to thank Representative Hirschauer, Representative Matt Hansen. We have the King County Board represented here with Mavis Bates, Batavia City Council, okay, and we have Geneva City Council. Do we have any others?
St. Charles.
We have St. Charles. Okay, thank you we don't have all the names down, but thank you. We really appreciate it, and any other public officials who are here, we can't thank you enough for taking time and listening to what people have to say. I also want to thank all the members and friends of NEST who came here tonight, of the Sierra Club, of the Prairie Rivers Network, and the Citizens Utility Board. So thank all of you who came from the distance. And there are lots of League of Women Voters Central Kane County here tonight too, so thank you all for coming. We invite all of you to stay in touch and to get involved. If you have any questions or need additional information, there is information back on the table for the Tri-Cities Clean Energy at gmail.com. And please join us in these efforts by attending the Tri-Cities Clean Energy Organizing Meeting to be held at 7 p.m. on Monday, November 27th at St. Charles Public Library in the Miller House Community Room on the lower level. Good night and have a safe drive home.